No, this particular ensemble is not really indicative of the topic I'm talking about today at all. But it's Pride Month, and if I'm not going to get a Pride topic out, I'm at least going to get a Pride look on the record. Hey folks, let's talk about AI. Let's talk about generative AI. Let's talk about generative AI in movies and in the movie making process. There were a couple of things that happened, either of which by itself I might not have made a thing out of or might have just settled for a short, but both happening in relatively quick succession. Let's lump them together because they're both indicative of what is currently going on. I think for a long time, well, I say a long time, for as long as the possibility of generative AI had been that it would enter into our movies, and with nonsense like Tilly Norwood and that presentation done by Lucasfilms, both of which I addressed in individual videos, right down to things like the terrible AI shorts that tried to get pushed into movie theaters as part of the pre-roll before a movie starts. That was kind of what we were prepared for. And I think by and large, these places are realizing that doesn't work. The front-facing, most people, or at least enough people, can tell that that is definitely AI, and they are mad that they're seeing it. Kind of makes the forward-facing notion of AI just being front and center and a major part of the visual presentation of movies less likely. So what we're going to talk about instead today is two instances of AI that it is being snuck into the process, or attempting to be snuck in. One of which did end up on camera, but they're trying to dance around it. We'll get to that one later because it's a little bit sillier and a little lighter. Let's get to the one that is the exact opposite of absolute cinema. Martin Scorsese has partnered with an AI company called Black Forest Labs. Officially, he is on board as an advisor. What that means is really unclear. At this point, he appears to basically be a brand ambassador for their specific products and honestly for the concept of AI in movies in general. Now, it's worth noting that he is not the first, revered creative person to get in bed with AI to some extent. Obviously, there was the Darren Aronofsky AI slop American history things that were shockingly bad. But even beyond that, quite a few Hollywood figures have partnered with or even started up their own AI companies. This would include people like Natasha Lyonne, who literally started her own AI company. And even those who aren't necessarily pushing it, there are a number of voices basically resigning themselves to the fact that it's an inevitability. Sandra Bullock did that relatively recently as well.
It's here. We have to observe it. We have to understand it. We have to lean into it. We have to use it in a really constructive and creative way, make it our friend.
So there is this general narrative that is incredibly good for the AI companies that this stuff is inevitable. We can't get rid of it. So we have to embrace it now so that we have some say over it. And from one angle, here's what I'll say. If it was a true proper inevitability, there might be some truth to that, but it's not. The narrative is that it's inevitable. The narrative is that we can't just get rid of it. We can. We have. Most movies are still made without involving this nonsense, at least so far as we are aware at present. And movies have been made without it for over 100 years. So that narrative is BS, but it is core to just AI in general. Inevitability is a core aspect of the narrative of any technology or AI company or AI evangelist. They have to claim that you can't get rid of it, and it's definitely the future, and you can't stop it, so embrace it now. That was, for the record, the same narrative behind cryptocurrency and NFTs. Now, cryptocurrency has unfortunately not fully gone away, but they don't even really try to claim that it's definitely the future now. Now it's about, well, don't you want to try and make money off of it? They don't claim as much that everyone's definitely going to be using it because I don't think anybody buys that. NFTs are practically gone now. But both were sold as inevitabilities that we would all have to get used to. That was a lie. So is this. Now, Scorsese isn't necessarily pushing the notion that this is inevitable, therefore we have to embrace it. Certainly, to go by the video that Black Forest Labs put up on its own YouTube channel featuring Scorsese, he seems to be at least presenting himself as trying to find a way to actually integrate it into his filmmaking process in a way that would actually theoretically be useful. Now, how sincerely does he believe any of this? I don't know. He's being presented from a position of believing what he said sincerely, so I'm going to treat it that way. I don't really want to get into speculation about, how much was he paid? Does he actually believe this, or is he just trying to, get that bag or whatever? And for my purposes, it doesn't really matter. It's destructive either way, and I don't really feel like trying to parse a man's thoughts, because I literally can't do that, and neither can you. It doesn't matter, because he argues from the position of, this will be helpful to me and other filmmakers. So let's examine that claim.
Cinema is a young medium, only around 125 years old, so we have to be open to how it can evolve. I utilized 3D with Hugo and de-aging technology for The Irishman. Now, with this tool, I can share what I'm visualizing more clearly and efficiently to my creative team, the production designer, art designer, and cinematographer, for them to build on to enrich cinematic intelligence. Enrich cinematic intelligence? What the fuck does that even mean?
So he's pitching this technology as sort of an evolution of stuff that he has already used and put up on screen, which sounds good until you actually stop and think about it, because, those were techniques that actually ended up on the screen. And at present, he and or Black Forest Labs seem to realize they can't really pitch AI as the finished product that ends up on screen, because the backlash is so severe right now on all that. So he has to try and claim that it would still help, even though it wouldn't end up on screen, and the things that he's comparing it to had to do with the final result on the screen. So it's already kind of on shaky grounds if you actually think about what he's claiming it's an evolution of. The demonstration that is up on Black Forest Labs' YouTube page is basically him using it to storyboard something. Now, here's the first thing that should probably be acknowledged right off the bat. A storyboard artist is a real job. That is a human being who you are replacing. Now, there are certainly plenty of people out there who do not care. Be they executives, be they evangelists, be they just jackasses who don't think artists deserve to make a living. Plenty of people will not care. But let's make it clear right off the bat, any claim that using it for a storyboard isn't displacing anybody or taking it out of human hands is a lie. Humans are storyboard artists, and now you're having an AI do it. That's our first thing, but you'll notice that storyboarding is a behind-the-scenes use. Again, not having it end up as the finished product in front of actual audiences.
The driver would be, again, very Eastern European, almost like someone you'd find in the street there, older. Well, he'd probably be in his 40s, but he would look like he's in his 60s.
Now, this whole thing is kind of a bizarre pitch, because storyboards don't need to look like the finished product. I mean, part of the reason they don't is for practical reasons. To do a drawing that detailed takes way longer than is reasonable, but that also kind of benefits the art of storyboarding. You only need to draw enough to get the idea for things like, how do we plan this shot? What angle should we have? How should we have the camera move? How will it lead into the next shot? Where should we position people relative to each other, the camera, props, buildings, etc.? It's just for sorting out that stuff. And the reason you do a storyboard is so that you go in with a plan, because you can technically shoot a movie without a storyboard, but then you're probably going to end up with a mess that needs to be fixed in the edit. So it's just part of the planning process. But again, you don't need it to look this detailed. Its function of helping you map out camera moves, people placement, etc., doesn't actually benefit from having this high fidelity or this photorealistic an image. That doesn't make storyboards better at what they are actually intended to do. So something that Scorsese keeps bringing up, and maybe one of the only arguments that could be made in favor of this thing, is the idea of saving time. Now, to be mildly fair, it is true that time is money, especially in the movie industry. Anything that takes longer than it needs to costs more money than it needs to. Whether it be because you had to rent a space for longer, you rent over into an extra day, so you have to pay the entire crew one more day of filming than maybe should have been necessary. However long you've got people working on the pre-production, you got to pay them for that. Time literally is money. So The idea of, well, this would make it take faster, like, okay, that's certainly not to the benefit of audiences. That is to the benefit, at most, of people at the corporate level, maybe to the directors, but here's the thing. Why would it actually be faster? I'm kind of dubious about this claim and this pitch because he tries to present it like, oh, this makes for a better storyboard because I'm presenting it in the cinematic language. Well, so is a drawn storyboard. I mean, it's an approximation of the cinematic language, but it's still that. So what he seems to be getting hung up on is the transference of the idea from his thoughts to his mouth, explaining it to another person, that person then having to draw it, him looking at it and go, okay, not quite that, fix this, fix that.
How do you create what you have in your thought, in your mind's eyes, almost like a painter? You know, how does he or she get that from here onto the canvas?
He focuses on that as if it's a dilution of what's in his head. Except doing it with AI is the exact same process.
A kind of gnarled, old, almost medieval town in the Caucasus, let's say.
The only difference is the end thing you end up with just looks much higher fidelity than a storyboard drawn by a normal storyboard artist would. But the actual process is the same. He still has to think it. He still has to describe what he wants to the people writing the prompt in the AI. He still has to give a couple tweaks for when it's up. It's literally the same process.
Yeah, this is getting there. Look at that. That's it.
Does that kind of look like it?
Yeah, even narrower.
Even narrower, okay.
Whatever amount is being diluted from your thoughts into a storyboard artist's work is the exact same process that you're using to give it to an AI.
But it is, you do have that control of making the film rather than doing it solely through verbal language.
1 minute earlier.
I have in mind a town, not a village, not a city. A kind of gnarled, old, almost medieval town.
Is it possible in the most ideal conditions imaginable that maybe what he ends up with coming from an AI looks more precisely like what it did in his head? Potentially. Is that actually a good thing? Here's something that I am getting hung up on more and more, and I really need more people to understand. Film and television are collaborative mediums. That is not a bug, it's a feature. But if you have fully bought into the auteur theory BS, the idea that it is a director's medium and the director's vision should override all else and everyone else's job is just to ensure the director's vision gets made, then you view any amount of collaboration and any amount of ways in which the director's idea gets tweaked because of the input of another person as a problem. It's not a problem. When you have artists who are good at what they do, who care about what they do, who bring their own perspective, as long as they are not in a position where they are just completely on the wrong page and 100% clashing with the director, if they're on the same page, which they should be, then they're adding to something. They're not diluting the director's perfect vision. They are contributing their knowledge, their understanding, and their ideas. And when it works, that makes everything better. Because while this little video does not come out and say the quiet part out loud, the notion of, you know, if I could transfer it directly from my mind onto the screen, that would be some kind of perfect way to make a movie. But that is implied in the way that it gets talked about, because there is still this general notion of like, oh, it's more precise, like what it is from my head and onto the screen. Okay, but at that point, you're not making a film. Because a film, by its nature, is a collaborative process. And the fact that other people impact it and their artistry and their artistic instincts and their thoughts and their opinions get added to the mix is meant to make the whole thing better and make it part of that medium. If you could actually transfer exactly what was in your head onto the screen, you wouldn't have a movie. You'd have an exercise in creative masturbation. Now, before anybody gets on my ass, is it possible for one single person to make a film, be it live action or animated? Yes, it is. Does that make it any less of a movie? No, but that's not the kind of movie Martin Scorsese makes. He's here in order to whitewash this concept and sell it to the idea of large-scale, big-budget auteur directors. Those people aren't making a short film where they are the only person and they do the editing and they write the music and they do the lightings and they're the actor in it in their garage. This is not a guy who is an animator who just hand draws everything until he has the end result and he was literally the only person who worked on it. Those kinds of artists exist. He's not them. They're not pitching it as something for those artists because those kinds of artists generally want it so much in their hands and their own personal touch that they wouldn't want the machine's nonsense anyways. So again, the very notion of the use of this thing is weird and off-putting. The more you actually think about it, the more of how it would actually be used and what it would actually benefit, which again, at best, the only tangible pitch in this is that maybe the process of doing the storyboards would be faster.
If you have a tool like this, you could figure it out much quicker. And you could save production time and also less wear and tear on the crew.
But also, if you had storyboards that look this photorealistic, you know what that's going to encourage? For the people who are then trying to realize your vision for your movie to just make it look exactly like that as possible. And again, that's not a good thing. The translation of concept from director to storyboard artists, to then go into the hands of cinematographers and costumers and lighting techs, all working together, collaborating and contributing their understanding and experience and knowledge to create something that is, probably not the exact thing that the director had in their head, but that will be the unique product of the people involved in it. That's what filmmaking is. But when you hand them, rather than a storyboard that was drawn by hand by an actual artist with plenty of room for interpretation, instead, you hand over to them this photorealistic thing. You are basically, whether you say it outright or not, saying, well, this is exactly how I want it to look, so make it look exactly like that. And you are removing their ability to be creative in their work. You are deadening their art, thinking that it somehow saves you time on yours.
So cool. I wish the world had been able to give you these tools 20 years ago.
Yeah, I know. I mean, we would have been probably on schedule.
Now, again, I'm not saying that Scorsese himself actually doesn't understand this or that he would want to no longer have the input of his collaborators, in the crew or in the cast. But he is aligning himself with people who are coming at this entire thing from the position of the director's vision is all that matters. Everyone else is just in the way. And that's not filmmaking. If you want that degree of control over your art, write a book. Paint a portrait. Do something other than a, by its nature, deeply collaborative medium, because this is just a way to kill the collaboration. And just to get this gripe out there, he keeps using this nonsense phrase, cinematic intelligence.
This conveys a cinematic intelligence. You can't really describe, you got to see it.
Got to see it.
And that's what we talk about.
Got to see
cinematic intelligence.
I guarantee you that was a buzzword Black Forest Labs came up with and insisted that he use. And as Jessie bitched about when she tried to read his earlier quote, what the hell does that even mean? And the fact that Martin Scorsese has the nerve to slag off popcorn movies like Marvel and talk about them like they dilute the value of cinema and then get in bed with this nonsense, it's just depressing, to be honest. So let's move on to the second thing, which is a bit more fun for being ridiculous and much more clear-cut. Let's talk about the movie Stop That Train. If you haven't heard of this movie, and I'd say there's a decent chance of that, it's a movie that, going by the trailers, is a mix of pretty typical drag and gay humor wrapped in the framework of a deliberately campy disaster movie parody.
In English, please.
It's gonna be a disaster.
In Spanish, please.
Va a ser un desastre.
When I say drag and gay humor, think of it as the kind of jokes one might see made on an episode of RuPaul's Drag Race. And not coincidentally, RuPaul is the headline star of this movie, playing the President of the United States.
Tell it to me straight.
There's a Glamazonian Express headed directly into a massive storm.
Now tell it to me gay.
Now, it has a rather lengthy list of actors, some of whom I even quite like, such as Rachel Bloom and Sarah Michelle Gellar. But despite that, I certainly had no intention of seeing this myself. It's not my kind of humor, first of all, and I bounced off Drag Race over 14 years ago now. This was not for me, and I wasn't paying attention to it. But something happened that kind of got a lot of attention it did not want. So this controversy got kicked up by one Gloria Cook. Cook is a young filmmaker and freelance VFX artist who got to see an early screening of the film, and after doing so, left a not-so-glowing review on her Letterboxd account.
Also, if the film wasn't bad enough on its own, it's one of the most conspicuous uses of AI I've seen in a film, with a lot of VFX looking like Gen AI, and doubts about how much of the obvious stock footage might also be. Confirmed in the end credits that Acme AI was the top-billed VFX company on the film.
Now, her review on Letterboxd, to say that it went viral, probably an overstatement, but it went just viral enough that the movie's director, Adam Shankman, felt the need to weigh in and defend the movie. Shankman's probably best known to mainstream audiences as the director of the 2007 movie musical Hairspray. So here's the denial that he issued.
Hey everyone, every shot in Stop That Train was made by human hands. It's come to my attention that there is some online speculation that Stop That Train is full of fully generative AI shots, and I'm here to tell you this is patently not true. There are a sum total of 0 shots conceived by AI in the movie. We employed hundreds of VFX artists who all killed themselves getting this out for release, and not one job was taken out of human hands. The movie is a fully human-made piece of joy and laughter. Take it in and enjoy it, y'all. We need the laughter. Love, Adam.
Now, depending on how much attention you were paying, you might have noticed some of that is worded kind of in a peculiar way, an oddly specific way. The way that makes something technically a denial of something very specific as opposed to something very broad. And between what I'm about to break down with this denial and also some things that Gloria Cook pointed out, which I'll also get to, I'm pretty confident saying there is AI in this movie. But let's break down this statement first.
It's come to my attention that there is some online speculation that Stop That Train is full of fully generative AI shots, and I'm here to tell you this is patently not true.
Now that is interesting because technically what he's denying is not AI at all, but the existence of fully generative AI shots. And actually, Gloria Cook herself, the originator of that Letterboxd review, went over a fair amount of this in TikTok, and she said a lot of this more succinctly than I probably would, so you're going to see a bit of her.
He says there are 0 shots conceived by AI and disputes it is full of fully generative AI shots, but he never says generative AI wasn't used, which feels intentionally worded.
Because while, yes, AI can be used to generate the entire shot, it can also be used to generate just certain parts, or you could take certain parts of a fully AI shot out of that and put them into something that maybe has some actual filmed elements, maybe has some design CGI elements in it. And so it's still there, but it's not the entire shot. You just need to composite it in, so you just need compositors for that. Keep the idea of compositing and compositors in the back of your mind. We're going to come back to it. I actually reached out to Gloria to ask if she would be willing to talk to me over Zoom on this. Unfortunately, Zoom kind of messed up on me and the video that it captured is unusable. The audio's fine though, so you'll still at least get to hear her.
I'm Gloria Cook. I'm a freelance visual effects artist and filmmaker. I do freelance work, so I'm not with a company or a house, but mostly working on smaller productions like short films and music videos, but I also have some experience with like web series. And I focus more on compositing stuff with a little work in 3D. Well, I attended NewFest this year, NewFest Pride, which is their summer festival, and I know the people there. So I was able to get an invite to that and attended with my girlfriend.
I'm sorry that it couldn't have been a better movie.
No, but we all saw the whole lineup. So we also saw the new Gregoraki, we saw Leviticus, we saw the premiere of Can't Me Asthma, so we had a great time.
Oh, well, yeah, okay, there you go.
It made up. They got better with each film, so it was a good experience.
I'm assuming you didn't, but did you have any idea that of what it was going to stir up when you pointed out what was to you incredibly obvious use of AI?
Well, not at all. I have a lovely group of Letterboxd followers, but I usually get 5 likes on a review if it's 20. It's like, wow, we're blowing up here. The whole reason that this happened is when I saw the film, it just activated something in me where I knew that something felt wrong with what I was seeing. And then that seeing the AI credit at the end, like, was kind of the confirmation of like, yeah, that does explain why something is feeling wrong with what I'm seeing.
What did you feel when you read how exactly he had worded his denial?
He definitely words it in like in a weird way, like in a way that like at first glance looks like he's denying, but when you look closer, feels like he's denying very particular things with his language, like the conceived comment, the like full like all the shots were fully created and or nothing was fully created by AI, which is like different. In an interesting way. Like I feel like a lot of people in the comments were noticing like if they didn't use AI, why aren't they just like saying that very bluntly?
There are a sum total of 0 shots conceived by AI in the movie.
Conceived by AI. What does that even mean? Because yes, conceived can technically mean created by, but that word is usually only used that way when talking about people. You conceive a child. When you're talking about artistic works, conceived means to think of, to imagine, to create in your mind. I believe that AI probably didn't conceive any of these shots. Whoever prompted the AI conceived of the shots. Now that might seem like an odd bit of splitting hairs, but he worded it in a way that kind of gives him that out. He basically issued a denial of something that I'm not sure anybody would have even claimed about this. Like the first thing, saying, oh, there's no fully generative AI. That might have been something people were prepared to claim that he's denying. But again, his denial only accounts for a very specific use of AI, not AI at all in the thing. And like conceived by AI is kind of a meaningless, worthless, nothing of a phrase, which makes it a very easy denial for him to issue and something that I'm now going to toss in the trash and move on.
And not one job was taken out of human hands.
That one's just a complete semantic minefield. Because yes, there's clearly still a lot of VFX workers on the movie, so an argument could be made that any worker who might have done something that instead was made with AI, that worker just got a different effects job instead of the one that they might have done that now AI has done instead. And if you're thinking of it that way, yeah, AI didn't take work out of the hands of somebody, because for that specific wording to be true, that would mean that you hired a human, then fired them in order to have an AI do it. But if you just never put a human in that position, then the AI is just performing a function. It didn't take work away from anybody because you didn't put anybody in that position in the first place. Again, this is hair splitting, but this thing is so weirdly worded, I think it's worth splitting hairs about because it feels constructed in a way to be able to weasel out of things later because there is almost definitely AI in this thing. Because honestly, going through this statement with a fine-tooth comb isn't something I would normally do, especially if his squirrely wording was the only evidence I had, but that is not the case.
Let's look at details. In this shot, the train has 8 large windows in the carriages and 6 main windows in the cab. But in this shot, the train has 6 large windows in the carriages and 3 main windows in the cab. Also notice how the cab's windows to the right are slightly different too. And in this shot, again, 8 carriage windows, 6 in the cabs, and then 6 carriage windows, 3 in the cab. And just look at the texturing on the rocks. Admittedly compressed in the trailer, but on the big screen, it's so clear something is off. Like it's been upscaled from a lower source. And this bridge is completely missing its support leg.
I co-signed everything that she just said, but in addition to that, I think she only pulled shots from one trailer. I looked at an additional trailer, and there's even more discrepancies than what she had. There's this shot, and I don't even know how to count the windows per car because there actually isn't a proper break in between each car. There's this slight gap in the coloring that seems to suggest where the break is, but from what I can tell, there's now suddenly 13 square windows in the front car before we hit what looks like the point, which is meant to be the break between cars. So we have a randomly changing number of windows in the cars on this train, from 6 to 3 to 13. Now, just to be clear, so everyone's on the same page, you might find yourself asking, okay, but like, is that proof that it's AI? Couldn't that be some kind of error? Isn't that something that can happen with just normal CGI work? And the answer is technically, but not really.
These discrepancies just aren't issues you'd have with CG, where a single 3D model of the train would be built and reused in every shot. What reason would there possibly be to create multiple 3D models of the train with different numbers of windows?
AI, whenever you generate a prompt, it creates it from scratch. There are some where you can feed it certain specific information, say be sure that one of the people in it looks like this, and feed it an image, or generally describe the train in this case and things like that. So it's not going in completely blind, but it is creating the image from scratch every time. And since it's creating it from scratch every time, there can be these little inconsistencies that might look fine in any given shot, but you start comparing them to each other and it's not quite the same thing, because it built it from scratch for every shot. CG, you're not building a brand new CGI 3D model for every shot. You're using the same model in every shot. That's the point of having a 3D CGI asset like that. You can shift it, you can change the lighting on it, you can have the camera move around it in different ways, but you don't have to make a new model for that. Now, sometimes certain CGI assets will have multiple models. You get that a bit more often when you are dealing with something that needs to move maybe more organically, like if it's meant to be a person or something. There might be one that is better for close-ups. There might be one that is rigged slightly differently so it can do certain movements better. But I am struggling to think of any situation in which it makes sense to build multiple inconsistent CGI models of the first car of this train. You'd have to go out of your way and do a ton of extra work in order for this to be a CGI error. And seriously, if that is somehow what happened, then somebody needs to be fired, probably at the supervisor position, because they had people working on completely redundant models that didn't even match, and then allowed completely different models all to be used in the finished product. If that's what happened, and again, I do not believe that, and I have an incredibly difficult time finding that even the slightest bit plausible. Possible? Technically, yes. Plausible? No!
I thought it was interesting to see an AI company in the credits for a film that I saw, and I'd done the smallest bit of looking into that, but I know that nobody had talked about it, so I felt like I just thought it was interesting. It wasn't even necessarily a qualitative statement of look at this film that's bad because it used AI. It's just, that's the world we're living in now, I guess, where I'm seeing that.
Okay, so why don't we talk about the two companies credited for the VFX in this movie and see if maybe we can find some answers there. The company that appears to have the most credits is Bot VFX. They've been around since 2008, and they've contributed effects work to everything from The Devil Wears Prada 2 to James Cameron's Avatar series. Now, while Bot does admit to making use of some AI for their work, their claim is that it is part of their production pipeline and not something that they use to create finished assets that end up on screen. So while it's possible that they're misrepresenting how much they use AI, I don't really feel like trying to parse that. I'm actually prepared to take them at their word for the amount and ways that they use it. So that brings us to the second company, Acme AI and FX. Yeah, they have AI right in the company name. Now, if you go to their website, you'll see this scrolling list of films, and that's a pretty impressive looking list. Except this company didn't work on any of those. It couldn't have. This company was founded in 2025, and it's showing movies as far back as from the 90s in this frickin' crawl. So what is this? So this appears to be a collection of films that were worked on by what the site simply calls the principals. Now, the website does not specifically say who the principals are, but they're obviously people who have been producers or executive producers on films, including the ones that are shown in that list. And while I can't get a list of all the people who are considered to be the principals, I do know who the three founders of this thing are. Those would be brothers Ryan and Matthew Kavanaugh and Lawrence Gray. Of the three of them, Ryan Kavanaugh has the most extensive resume as an executive producer. Lawrence's is a bit slimmer, and Matthew, okay, well, he's listed as a producer on an upcoming movie about Bitcoin, so yeah, we'll just move on. So yeah, Acme is just straight up an AI company. Not we use a couple AI tools. It just is an AI company. That's what they are. That's what they do.
And I'm going to make a big deal about this because this is going to be a big deal with Hollywood moving forward. Filmmakers are going to lie about not using AI, and when they get caught, they're going to claim it wasn't generative AI, and that'll look good when news sources are able to publish the headlines saying that like it's a fact, as if the filmmakers aren't buying ads on those websites to promote the film,
and it will all be swept under the rug as they try to obfuscate the process by assuming the public doesn't understand visual effects. I do, though. I'm a visual effects artist.
This seems like an appropriate time to talk about my frustration with the coverage of some of what has gone on. Specifically, I'm going to call out who on June 2nd put out a piece titled, "No, RuPaul's Stop That Train did not use generative AI." I could honestly spend a half hour going through this article and why it is an absolute piece of crap, but I'll try and boil it down as quickly as I can here. Firstly, they cite an unnamed source involved in the movie, confirming that there is no generative AI used in the making of the film. To be very blunt about it, unless they are talking to one of the high-level producers or the director, which you'd think would be okay for them to talk on the record and not be anonymous about it, there's literally no way for the average inside source to know that. Most inside sources are people who are part of the production line, or on set as PAs or low-level things like grips and assistants, or were part of larger teams. And none of those people would be able to say definitively that no generative AI was used in the entirety of the film because they're only focused on their one small part. So if their source is one of the bigger names, those people are cowards, and I still think they're lying. And if their source was one of those smaller people, they didn't have a basis on which to make that claim in the first place. This article only briefly brings up Gloria Cook talking about her Letterboxd review, but seems to have no awareness of the additional work and research that she had since done on Twitter and TikTok and Instagram.
But I have just one question. Where is the bridge support beam?
Instead, they decide to focus on other people running with it and citing what basically amount to mean tweets. Out also decides to add to its evidence a whitewashing, glazing article in the Village Voice about Acme AI and FX. They flat out regurgitate the uncritical praising that Village Voice did as if it is actual evidence. Here's an example. The company's technology used to reduce or eliminate many of the traditional costs associated with location shoots, set constructions, travels, permits, and logistical delays, states the Village Voice, while noting actors, directors, writers, and department heads keep their positions in this arrangement. Okay, couple things about this. First of all, the company's technology is used to reduce or eliminate traditional costs. What costs? What costs that were associated in all these things? Is it the cost of hiring human beings to do them? And what technology? Is it AI technology? Is that literally everything they do? You go and talk about a company that literally has AI in its name, and you just talk about the company's technology in vague terms while claiming that they aren't using generative AI when AI is in the name of the company. And I know I'm raising my voice. I am actually funneling so much of my frustration with this overall situation and kind of venting it out right now, but I need to, because this sort of journalistic malpractice is not acceptable in the current environment that we are dealing with right now. There is the additional thing where they say that actors, directors, writers, and department heads will keep their positions in the arrangements. Yeah, they were always going to. It's the people who do the work. It's the actual people who build sets, the actual people who arrange for travel, the actual people who build CGI 3D models. They were the ones who were always going to lose their jobs. So you just list the most visible people that maybe your readership has heard of and just pretend that all the hundreds to thousands of other people that they will never know the names of don't exist and won't be affected when you know they will be, or at least you would if you thought about what you were saying for more than 2 seconds. Out also uses a very similar trick to what Shankman did, and we already talked about, saying that Acme uses AI as a tool but did not replace any humans in the creation of these effects. We've already talked about this kinds of phrasing, that unless you put somebody in that position and then remove them and replace them with AI, you can then claim no humans were replaced because you just had AI do it in the first place. Out just flat out seems to have fully bought into AI as an okay thing simply because it is appearing in queer works. It mentions but really glosses over earlier issues with AI use, or at least accusations of AI use, in RuPaul's Drag Race at a couple of points in the last few years. And then it goes ahead and lists all these other movies that AI was used as part of the work in these things. None of that makes it okay either, you know. They also reprint Shankman's denial and claim that it fully shuts down the AI rumors, except we've already gone over his statement and why it absolutely does not do that. It is a denial of very specific things, but at no point does it say there is no generative AI in this. But they thought it was okay to just run with this headline regardless. And then possibly the single most infuriating paragraph in the entire thing. The Stop That Train source urged fans to not be deterred by rumors and encouraged them to support the film, which is notable for showcasing a cast of ally LGBTQ+ and drag performers in a theatrical film.
Like, I know some people are like, well, there may be some AI in the film, but there's still so many queer artists who worked on it, and we should still support it. And I don't agree. Like, I think the film has been tainted by this.
And I agree with Gloria on this. Generative AI, especially visual generative AI in a visual medium, is innately destructive to the art form. And as far as I'm concerned, it's disqualifying. I will always root for queer artists. I will always root for their projects, but I will not make excuses for them when they use stuff like this. So to hell with Out Magazine for running this article. And while we're at it, to hell with them, which is another queer-focused outlet, because they just regurgitated this entire thing with no additional notes of any kind. We'll get back to talking about the actual movie now, but the way that this thing has been covered was really frustrating to me. And I'll actually note that while I don't have it on the record because I hadn't started recording the Zoom yet, Gloria told me flat out nobody else had ever reached out to her in regards to any of this. Now, you might remember earlier I said to keep in the back of your mind the idea of compositing.
On top of that, while I can't verify the full credits since I don't have the film in front of me, the IMDb credits list 26 compositing artists, but there are 0 roles for 3D or CG artists, meaning there's no one listed on IMDb who created the train assets, only people who combined assets together. I can't say if the IMDb credits are complete yet, but it feels like an auto mission, especially when these VFX shots could only be done with CGI or AI. And AI requires no animators, only compositors, to clean up shots and combine elements together.
While I can't prove that this is the case, it does seem very evident that somebody involved in production is watching your stuff and has gone through it, because there's been the changes to the way the credits are currently listed on IMDb.
Oh, has there?
Compared to your screenshot, because in your Twitter thread, you screenshotted the IMDb credits as they were at the time. And it lists all these people as compositor. As it is currently listed on IMDb, most of those people's credit has been changed to just visual effects artists. It no longer says compositor specifically. Now, it does still for some of them, but a whole chunk of people who in your screenshot it says compositor, it now does not say that. And I wouldn't normally bring up IMDb credits if for no other reason than the fact that almost anybody has the ability to edit this stuff. While I can't prove this 100%, it sure looks like somebody involved in the film was keeping an eye on what Gloria was saying about it and tried to retroactively cover their tracks on the IMDb listings. You know what? I'm actually going to try and cover my bases here, because if somehow, against all odds, if Gloria is wrong about this and I'm wrong about this, and they are able to prove that this was definitely not AI, because if this was actually done with CG, it should be very easy for them to do.
If Adam Shankman wants to make me look like a huge idiot, all he has to do are post wireframes of these scenes to show off the 3D models. It's that easy. But I don't think he will, because I don't think they exist.
On the off chance that somehow I'm wrong about this, this is still a conversation worth having. It's worth having about this movie, and it's worth having about other movies in the future. Here's why. Even if I'm wrong, and even if Gloria is wrong about this specific instance, this is all still worth doing, because it's not just about looking at something and going, vibes are off, must be AI. Evidence was gathered and explained. People were being educated on what to look for. And it is worth it if only to send a message, because it needs to be hammered in to these people, these studios, these directors, these producers, because they seem to have gotten the message that just going full bore, here's an AI movie, is not a good idea. Tilly Norwood is never going to be a thing. That Star Wars Lucasfilm thing looked absolutely pitiful. They seem to realize that the turn against AI slop means they can't put it front and center, and they're trying to sneak it in the back way. And they know nobody wants this. That's why folks behind movies like Stop That Train have to lie about it. And we know that they're lying about it because, shout out to the folks over at Extra, they actually got Adam Shankman to admit there was AI in the movie. He didn't admit to a lot, but he did admit that there was actual AI use in there, thus proving everything that both Gloria and I said about how weaselly his initial denial was and how specific it was and how it could still mean there was AI in the movie, despite what rags like Out decided to print as their damned headlines. These people are still trying to use this stuff even though they are aware it is a toxic product. And we know that they're aware of that because within less than 3.5 hours of that article going up on Extra, folks from Bleecker Street, the studio distributing Stop That Train, reached out with their own weaselly little way of trying to even more narrowly define what it was Adam had actually let slip. They know nobody wants this. So first they deny it exists, then they give these really narrow things, and then even when called out on it, they just try and be, no, it's just this. It's just this. They try and make it acceptable, and it is not at any level. And at some level, they know that, but they're using it anyway to save money.
I'm not saying human visual effects artists didn't work on this film. They did. But if they did use AI, as all evidence seems to point to, then they got around needing 3D modelers or animators for a cheaper workflow. A cheapness that the filmmakers are proud of when they talk about the film and how quickly and cheaply they were able to make it. No one has yet reached out to me, either from the production or from the many news sources that are discussing my review and Twitter thread exposing this. I'm right here. I have nothing to hide. I am a trans woman in a country that wants to get rid of me, an unemployed visual effects artist in an industry that sees me as a corner to cut, and I have nothing to lose and all the time to keep talking about this. Don't let them stop the conversation here. Keep talking about this. And please, don't stop that train. If you want to support queer art, check out these new and upcoming queer films made without AI, or feel free to support a queer visual effects artist like me.
And it is worth educating audiences on what to look for so that these people will be more scared to use this stuff than ever. It is worth putting the fear of this into them so that these places put in the work to ensure that it is clear that their stuff doesn't even vaguely look like it could be AI slop. So if it's not AI, get your act together, because you should be scared to even look like you might be AI generated. That's the state I want these companies, these producers, these directors in. I want them terrified of people even suspecting they used it, much less that they would ever dare to try and sneak it in. But they are. They're trying to sneak it in a couple of speeded by shots that have blur effects on them that they thought nobody would notice, or they're trying to sneak it into a part of the process that most audiences won't be aware of or have eyes on. They're still trying to push this and integrate it into the filmmaking process. They are trying to push it in with a crowbar, and they're trying to buy legitimacy from people like Martin Scorsese or scare people into adopting it because they assume it's inevitable. This isn't true. This is a product in search of a solution. If it was actually fixing a problem, there would be an actual defense of it. But there isn't. So they have to roll it back and get sneakier about it and use it for these small things that they hope nobody notices. You know what? People keep noticing. People noticed the AI-generated bullshit posters in Late Night with the Devil. People noticed the opening credits to Secret Invasion. Audiences don't want this. They have made that incredibly clear. And it's not even just about movies. The general populace has signaled, we don't want this slop. Full stop. But they're still trying to sneak it in because if anything is going to survive this inevitable burst of the AI bubble, it is going to be by the fact that they have integrated themselves too tightly into as many industries as possible so that they will argue, well, you can't just remove us, you depend on us too much. So you need to support us, you need to keep us here, you need to bail us out even. They are worming their way into the foundation because they realize that audiences will not accept them as camera facing. It's still the same goal. To integrate and make themselves somehow indispensable to a process that does not need them, never did, and never will. It's insidious. It's gross. And it's just laughable that a director is trying to defend the random window changes in a frickin' car that goes anywhere from 3 to 13 and trying to make us think, oh no, that is definitely not the fault of AI. I don't believe you, Adam. I almost feel bad for you because I bet you the producers made you run interference instead of putting themselves out there. So I feel a little bit bad for you that you're the one who's going to face this careening train head on. But also at the same time, if you were aware of the use of this stuff and you signed off on it and you were okay with it, fuck you. That's where I'm at with this. I've seen some people push back. They're like, oh, so we're just need to throw out a whole movie because of single pieces of AI? Yes!
Like, I know some people are like, well, there may be some AI in the film, but there's still so many queer artists who worked on it, and we should still support it. And I don't agree. Like, I think the film has been tainted by this.
This stuff is poisonous. Literally. The technology is poisoning communities. It is poisoning the water. It is draining the resources. It is making places unlivable. For what? Any amount of it at this point in time means we should throw the entire thing out. Yeah, I will draw that line. I am prepared to fight on that hill. I'm not going to say die on that hill because I think I'm in a pretty good position. You want to take me on? I'll be right here on this hill. I am at a zero tolerance point. Now, when I talked about AI in video games, I mentioned I can allow for a window of reasonable doubt for a certain period of time, where it was done earlier and maybe even the full picture of how damaging this stuff is on basically every single level, artistic, societal, technological, etc., where that wasn't clear yet. Now, am I still okay with the mass embrace of it? Well, no, because from the very start, it was clear that it was built off theft and complete disregard for copyright and all the rest of that. But, I talked about how some developers used it early on in their process and then ditched it because they didn't even like it, and maybe a couple of assets still slipped through. You might decide that that's completely a deal breaker for you. Depending on the time window, I maybe could accept that. Something released now in this environment with everything we know, yeah, no, zero tolerance. I don't care who made it, who directed it, who starred in it, what franchise it's a part of. If generative AI is used in the process, throw the whole thing out. As far as I'm concerned, yeah, we should be that hardline about it. Because this technology strips out the humanity from what is meant to be art, which, as far as I'm concerned, means it's not art anymore. Art is art because a human made it. Even bad art says something about the people who made it. AI art says nothing about anything because there's no humanity in it. There can't be. No human input took place. No, prompter doesn't frickin' count. So we should make a big deal, and I'll continue to make a big deal. It's toxic to the artistic process by stripping humanity out of it. It's toxic to the job market by making it harder for literally anybody to get a job these days, if only because the resumes are being reviewed and discarded by AI before they even get looked at by a single human being. It is toxic to the political environment as the entire populace of towns or states is being disregarded because a handful of local politicians got bought and talked into approving these AI data centers, which will raise electrical prices, which will strip water from the immediate vicinity, which will poison what water it comes into contact with. Nobody actually wants this other than the people building it. Yeah, I will hardline this. And I have no shame in that. I know I said the second one was a little bit more fun, but honestly, anytime we talk AI, I'm going to get a little heated because this shit pisses me off so much. A huge thank you to Gloria Cook for not only looking into this, doing the work that she did, but giving me her time and talking to me about this. Go follow her places. She seems real neat.
You can follow me on my Instagram, my Letterboxd, my Twitter. I've got a TikTok now, which I might upload some stuff to. And I am definitely available for work. I'm looking for more freelance visual effects work, and if you want to hire a career visual effects artist, I don't want you to think I'm grifting by plugging this, but I could really use the work, and I work for pretty cheap, so keep an eye on my stuff. I'm hoping to post some more like reel-related stuff as well on my socials, but just follow me at all those places.
But what are your thoughts on this? Any other AI in movies stuff that I missed? Or whatever your thoughts on anything that I talked about, drop them down in the comments. Let's talk about it. Patreon pays the bills and enables me to do this as my living, even if you can't help me out that way. Like, share, subscribe. Those all help. Don't worry too much about it, though. What I really want you to remember is that you, a human being, are beautiful, you are valid, and you are loved. You are the council, and I am just running the meetings. And until next time, this council is adjourned. Why are my finger guns? Why did I do that? Now to thank my highest supporting patrons: Robin Moore, Jared Boyce, Zubin Lipfula, Auntie Kate 808, Mira G, Angry Casperl, Claire Wright, Dave Hall, Snark Shark, Oliver B, Mystic Shadow, Daphne Matthews, Sean Miller, Welsh Wrestling Geeks, Melissa Pedersen, Becky Sparks, Twilord, Kay Johnston, Tracy Scrabbit, Pal Barabajoggle, Magdalena, Sir Didymus is my favorite, and a couple of additional names I'll have to dub in because I forgot to add them. And here I am with those dubbed names. Thank you to the Demon Bunny, Vin Jost, and Sarvis. I'm a little bit distracted, you might have noticed. Everyone's reintegrated. Don't worry about Navarro. He got rehoused. He's completely happy where he is. But this is the mischief now. And it's a lot.